Hey there, micro folks. This is Mr. Hooker, and today we are talking about the demand for resources. Think labor in this. It's labor or capital, but really, let's just all think labor. That's what we're going to focus on mostly for this, and basically the next two chapters, this and wage determination. So let's look at it. Significance of resource pricing. It does determine your money income. It's a money income determination. So what they price uh, you as your resource as labor determines your money income. If you get paid $7 an hour, that's one thing. If you get paid $15 an hour, that's a whole different money income. And if you're getting paid $25 an hour, that's another different money income. So that's kind of it. So for the firm, they are looking to cost minimize. You, as a worker, and understand this kind of flips the script. These next two chapters flips the script because up until now you have been the consumer and the firm has been the supplier. Now you are the supplier of labor and the firm is the buyer. So it's a little different. You are trying to sell at the highest price possible. They are trying to buy at the lowest price possible. Um, and so yeah, some people think the firm has all the leverage in this, but you do have leverage, especially if you have skills. Um, at lower skill levels, you don't have as much leverage, but at higher skill levels, you have more leverage than you may think. Um, and so firms are looking for people with skills, and therefore you have a little bit of leverage. And we'll talk about that probably more in 17 than here, and we'll talk about how that works. So resource allocation, firms have to allocate their resources as far as their finite funds among different resources. So are we going to spend it on capital? Are we spend it on labor? We have to spend some on other resources. So how do we allocate those various resources? And then some policy issues come into play as well. So what does the government say that where are they going to incentivize us to spend our money? And if they give incentives to spending it more on labor, then we will spend it more on labor. If they incentivize us to spend it more on capital, we'll spend it more on capital. So there's some things in that you have to understand, and those are somewhat industry specific as well. That's not a real general thing. They're more industry specific. So there is a derived demand for resources. We're going to assume perfect competition because that's the easy button. Um, but this is in product markets and resource markets. So derived demand is the idea that any demand for any resource is derived from the demand that resource derived for the demand for the good that resource produces. So as we all know, I hate Furbies, but we're going to talk about Furbies for a moment because my wife was showing me their back now too, but in a different way. But Furbies have been an up and down kind of thing, and they're perfect for this. So the demand for labor to produce Furbies and all the resources that go into Furbies um, are basically derived from the fluctuating demand for Furbies. When Furbies first came out, they were a hot item, and demand was through the roof for some stupid reason. Don't ask. Um, but that just meant that there was a high demand for the resources to produce Furbies, so those resources were moved toward Furbies. There was a high demand for the labor to produce them, and all of a sudden it crashed. You could find Furbies in the clearance bin for like $2. There weren't many people needed to produce Furbies, etc. So it was just like and then for a minute there, they were giving away Furbies with Happy Meals. If that tells you anything about the way Furbies went. So yeah, they were just not that popular, and then all of a sudden they became popular again. So the demand for the resources to produce Furbies went up again, and then they became not popular, and then they became popular again, and now they're not so popular. And then all of a sudden, I saw something. My wife showed me something yesterday where they're using Furbies. They're doing Furbies in other kind of ways now. So um, maybe they become popular again. Maybe they don't. Hopefully not. It's just what it is. So, um, but that just depends on that whole derived demand depends on the marginal product of the resource, which is basically the productivity of the resource in a sense, and the price of the product it produces. Um, so how expensive is it, and how much additional productivity do you have? So marginal revenue product, I told you we would get back, use marginal product to get back to something. Marginal revenue product is the change in total revenue resulting from a unit change in a resource input, basically labor. It's the change in total revenue divided by the unit change in resource quantity. Basically, this is the lower limit to the wage rate. Um, so um, you can't pay, or upper limits, excuse me, upper limit to the wage rate. You can't pay anybody um, more than what you what they're making for you. All right, so um, this is kind of how that goes. Um, you can pay them less, but you can't pay them more than the money they are bringing in. So this tells you how much money they bring in for you and I do it by day. If we're in class, I'll do it daily. You can do it daily, weekly, is another way. Um, but this tells you how much they do. You really can't get paid your marginal revenue product because most places you use unproductive resources. If you think about like in a classroom, there are computers, there are desks, and we have offices as teachers, and in our offices we have computers. We use paper. There are those things. They are all unproductive resources. So we as teachers cannot get paid our marginal revenue product. So we get paid below our marginal revenue product. Um, so that marginal revenue product is just the upper limit of that wage, and typically you get paid below that. So if you get paid your marginal revenue product, woo for you. You are just like right there at that top end. But don't expect to get paid that. The marginal resource cost is the change in total resource cost resulting from unit change in the resource input. So it's the change in the total cost divided by the unit change in resource quantity. So basically, this is kind of the wage rate. So the marginal productivity theory of resource demand is the marginal revenue product equals marginal resource cost rule. So to maximize profit, hire additional resources as long as the additional product produced adds more to revenue than to cost. Marginal revenue product schedule equals the firm's demand for labor, and MRC is exactly equal to the wage rate. And so here's how that looks in a graph kind of thing. For a purely competitive seller's demand curve for a resource, it looks like just like a downward sloping demand curve. 0 to 7 units of a resource, 0 to 7 units of labor, total product 0 to 28, marginal product 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, price is 2, so your total revenue 14 to 56, marginal revenue product 14, 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, and 2, basically 2 times your marginal revenue product, right? And so that's how that looks. If it is a imperfectly competitive thing, notice that it's not a straight line. It's kind of a kink line. Got that little dog leg, as we like to say here in the South. So your marginal product's the same. Your product price is decreasing 280 down to 165, and your marginal revenue products 18, 20, 13, 840, 440, 225, $1, and then a negative 105. That guy that's making a negative 105, he got to go. It's basically like him showing up in the morning, you handing him $1.05, and saying you can go home, right? So that is never going to work out. Top oil importing areas of 2020: China, about 11 million barrels. Europe about 9.5 million. U.S. at about 6. Other Asia Pacific about 5 and some change. India at about 4. Japan at just over 2. Singapore a little under 1, and Canada way down there. So what determines resource demand? Some of that's the change in product demand, some change in productivity, so quantities of other resources, what else is out there, the technological advances, and the quality of the variable resource also plays a factor. Changes in the price of the substitute resources. There's the substitution effect and the output effect. Substitution effect is just what it used to be, relative price of other resources. Output effect, a little bit different than what we used to have. As the price of another resource goes up, the use of of the current resource may fall, and vice versa. So then you have the net effect, and then changes in the price of the complementary resources. So let's look at the substitution and output effect. If there's substitutes in production, increases in the price of capital for the substitution effect, labor is substituted for capital. Increase in the price of capital for the output effect, production costs go up, output down, and less of both capital and labor are used. Increase in the price of capital for the combined effect, the demand for labor increases as the substitution effect exceeds the output effect, and the demand for labor decreases as the output effect exceeds the substitution effect. If there are complements in production, there is, if the increase in the price of capital, there is no substitution of labor for capital. Increase in the price of capital for an output effect, production costs go up, output goes down unless both capital and labor are used. Increase in capital for a combined effect, decrease in labor, demand for labor decreases because only the output effect applies. So factors that shift the labor demand curve. Gambling increases, change in product demand. So gambling would increase in popularity, increase in the demand for workers at casinos. Consumers decrease their demand for leather coats, decrease in demand for tanners. For change in productivity, and increase in the skill level of physicians increases the demand for their services. For changes in price of another resource, an increase in the price of electricity increases the cost of producing aluminum and reduces the demand for aluminum workers. The price of security equipment used by businesses to protect against illegal entry falls, decreasing the demand for night guards, or the price of cell phone equipment decreases, reducing the cost of cell phone services, which in turn increases the demand for cell phone assemblers. Occupational employment trends, rising employment in health and fitness services. Nurse practitioners are going up, exercise trainers are going up, group fitness instructors are going up. There's declining employment for telephone operators, basically because everybody's got cell phones now, and parking enforcement workers. 10 fastest growing occupations in percentage terms, 20 to 30. Motion picture projectionists, percentage increase is expected to be 70.5. We're getting back to the theaters. Basically, that one is one of those things. If you think about the pandemic, we cut basically everybody got cut during the pandemic. And so there was nobody working doing that. And now we're going back to the theater, and they've got to hire a ton of people back as we do that. So that may be just a one of those things from that. Wind turbine service technicians, that's expected to grow 68.2%. Ushers, lobby attendants, and ticket takers, once again, same as basically motion picture projectionists, 61.8%. Nurse practitioners, 52.2% growth. My nephew's wife just graduated a program that moved her, and I mean, it was a quick program at Clemson that moved her from being a nurse to a nurse practitioner in like a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. great increase in pay and really quick just because they needed nurse practitioners. Solar photovoltaic installers, 52.1% growth. Agents and business managers of artists, performers, and athletes at 46.3% growth. Exercise trainers and group fitness instructors at 39.3% growth, and model makers for wood, 38.6% growth. This movie will be in the class for you. It's a great econ movie. Most rapidly declining U.S. occupations: word processors and typists. 36% percentage decrease. Basically, we're all having to do that ourselves now. I mean, they just quit having other people do it, and I mean that's been going on for years. You type it yourself. Parking enforcement workers, 35% decrease. Nuclear power reactor operators, they quit building nuclear power plants. I think one new one is being built now, but they haven't built nuclear power plants for a long time. 32.9% decrease. Cutters and trimmers for hand, 29.7% decrease. Telephone operators, 25.4%. Watch and clock repairers, 24.9% decrease. I think that they've just gotten cheap enough that people buy new ones, is what the deal is there. Door-to-door sales workers, news and street vendors, and related workers, 24.1% decrease. Switchboard operators, including answering services, 22.7% decrease. And shoe machine operators and tenders, 21.6%. All right. Elasticity of resource demand, percentage change in resource quantity, divided by percentage change in resource price. It's an E sub RD. It's the ease of resource substitutability. So how easy can you substitute, let's say, plastic for glass or plastic for metal when you're making a car or something like that, right? How easy can you substitute certain resources? Elasticity of product demand, and the ratio of resource cost to total cost. So, how easy can you make these switches up? And that's what this will tell you. So your optimal combination of resources. What combination of resources will minimize cost to a specific level of output? This is what we want to know. Every business is looking to maximize profit, and one way to do that is to minimize cost. So your least cost combination of resources, we want to find the least cost rule. So what combination of resources will maximize profit? We have a profit maximizing combination of resources and a profit maximizing rule. And it's kind of similar to something you've seen previously. Your least cost rule, to minimize the cost of producing a given output, the last dollar spent on each resource yields the same marginal product. So this looks a lot like your marginal utility divided by price rule that you saw back in, I believe that was chapter 7. So your marginal product of labor divided by the price of labor has to be equal to the marginal product of capital divided by the price of capital. It doesn't keep going on. It's just those two. So marginal product of labor divided by price of labor equals marginal product of capital divided by price of capital. If those two are equal, then you are minimizing cost of producing a given output. But let's see about profit maximization. Each resource is employed to the point where its MRP is equal to its price. So MRP of labor equals the price of labor, and MRP of capital equals the price of capital. So that looks like this. MRP of labor divided by price of labor is equal to MRP of capital divided by price of capital, and they are both equal to 1. If that happens, you are profit maximizing. So what we have now is a least cost rule and a profit maximizing rule. One is marginal product, one is marginal revenue product. And that, ladies and gentlemen, will help you profit maximize in a firm. That's what we're all looking for, right? We want to make that money. So a numerical explanation here. Labor price is 8, capital price is 12. Marginal product here 12, 10, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Marginal revenue product 24, 20, 12, 8, 10, 8, 6, 3, 4. And then so quantity here is on capital 1, 2, 3, 7, 1 through 7. Marginal product 13 to 4. Marginal revenue product 26, 18, 12, 8, 6, 4, 2. Since capital price is 12 and labor price is 8, you want marginal revenue product of 8 and a capital marginal revenue product of 12. Where those happen is what you're looking for. So you have a labor of 5 and a capital of 3, and that will be your profit maximizing point and your least cost point. So there's where we are. Marginal productivity theory of income distribution. We want to be paid according to the value of the service that we offer. Whether we're workers or resource owners, you want to be paid paid according to the value of your service. The inequality that occurs is productive resources are unequally distributed, and this causes some market imperfections. So because those productive resources are unequally distributed, not everybody's paid according to the value of their services. This is not really fair, and this causes some discord amongst different groups. So labor and capital, their substitutes or complements. Banks use the least cost combination of resources. I was in banking for years before I got into teaching. That's basically how I paid my way through college. And I was doing it before ATMs and during ATMs. So, before ATMs got to the banks I were in. I mean, there were actually ATMs around, but not in the small banks I was at. So before ATMs, tellers would handle cash for customers. And then ATMs arrived in the 80s. They could handle cash for customers. And so at first, tellers were displaced, but today there are more ATMs and more tellers. So labor and capital are now complements. So it's better for everyone. All right, folks, I'll see you in chapter 17 where we talk about wage determination. Take care.